with some scrapbook paper, wood, and a stencil. Today, I'm going to make this sweet little church sign. Today is the Bringing Back Basic Gray collaboration. This is just a really small collaboration I do with my friends Sarah, who is Crafting Relaxing here on YouTube, and Kathy, who is Stampin' Cat over on Instagram. Each month, we just pull out some of the basic gray papers that we have in our stash, and we don't try and use it up. We just enjoy it rather than hoarding it forever. So for my basic gray project today, I have this sheet of kind of music paper. It is from the Fact Pad. This was actually just sent to me in some happy mail earlier, I guess towards the end of last year. So thank you for that. And I am going to do a little home decor project. I did something like this last fall, experimenting. And what I did was I did it a couple different ways. I did some music paper. I have some word paper here, but I basically just cut paper into shapes to make a church, and then did some outlining with some paint markers or paint, trying to make a church scene. I didn't love how this one came out. I did other variations for our fall craft shows, and I did like those better, and I did sell a lot of those. But I recently found Magnolia Design Co. They do chalk stencils and chalk paint. And if I'm using stencils, I really prefer chalk stencils. I am not great, I guess, at being light-handed. And so to kind of go lightly enough to prevent bleed through just doesn't happen. I apparently don't have the patience for that, but I can use stock chalk stencils. Those work really well for me because basically you just have like a little squeegee, almost like you're doing screen printing. So I found towards the end of last year, I don't know if it was Black Friday sale, I found this stencil here with the church, and it was perfect. I had seen church stencils before, but they were all like really big scale. I wanted something a little more smaller, and this happened to fit perfectly. I just decided I'm going to experiment rather than starting on a new board. I'm just going to experiment on the back of this one. So my hope is to stencil the church onto the paper and then cut out around. And then, so instead of having the kind of outline right at the edge of the paper, I would like to leave a little bit of the paper showing around. We'll see if I can do that, how my fussy cutting goes on that. And then I would like to Mod Podge it to my sign. I would love to bring in somehow like maybe Amazing Grace, some words on there. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I know the church on this particular block, the church is going to take up most of the space, so we might just be doing that.
The first thing I did was trim my 12 by 12 sheet of paper down to about 4.5 inches wide. And I did this so it would be wide enough for the church outline, but that the stencil would cover the whole piece of paper. So I've trimmed my stencil down just so I have the church, and then there is a backer sheet that I'm going to pull off. And then the back of the stencil, it is sticky, so it kind of holds itself in place. But I do stick it against my mat and then decide to do it against my jeans as well, just so that it's not like super tacky. Usually they aren't. It's just one of those things that's recommended by a lot of the chalk stencil companies that you kind of fuzz it, I guess, just so it's not gonna either pull paint off of your surface or tear the paper, whatever it is you're putting it on. So I have my chalk stencil, and now I also have some chalk paste. This is a black paste also from Magnolia Design Co. And then I have a little bitty squeegee, and I'm just taking the paste and running it evenly across the stencil. I'm not pushing super hard. I'm just making sure that there's like full coverage. And you can kind of see, well, first, so chalk paste is thicker than paint. And then what makes the chalk stencil special is that where you see the outline of the church, that's actually like mesh. And so when you're using the squeegee and the paste over the stencil, it just pushes the paste through the mesh only, and it's supposed to help like with more even coverage, more, or to prevent bleeding and things like that. And for me, it does. That's why I love to use this method as opposed to regular paint and stencil. I can never seem to get the amount of paint right, or I'm too heavy-handed, or run out of paint. You know, I've told you about that before. But this seems to just give me a nice, clear, crisp outline about every time, and it's just so quick. So I am going to take my little squeegee and my stencil to the sink and just rinse it in some warm water just to take all of the ink off, and then that will allow me to save it and use it again in the future. Now I'm going to trim my paper down and then fussy cut out my church. And I'm so far loving this outline. So the next trick will be doing a good job of fussy cutting. Again, I will have Sarah and Kathy linked in the description box below for you, and if you're interested, like Basic Gray doesn't make paper, so I don't know if I'll be able to find this particular paper line anywhere. I have seen Basic Gray on eBay occasionally, but normally I find it at thrift stores. But I will also link the Magnolia Design Co., the stencil, and the paste if you're interested in that. The hardest part about cutting the whole church was just the cross at the top, because that's where it had to get thin, and I was trying not to get too close but not too far away. I wanted a thin border. So the whole project itself was actually pretty quick. This is all real time. And if it weren't for dry time, like I let this paste, I think I ended up letting it dry overnight just because we had something going on. But without the dry time, like the actual process was very quick. So you're seeing this all real time, just with me cutting out like things where I disappear to go grab something, and a tool or supply that I forgot to bring over to my video desk. So it's definitely a quick and easy project thanks to the stencil, and it's much quicker than the one I showed you on the front side, because I fiddled with that, like adding different layers of marker and trying to get shadows and outlines. And so definitely for me, this is the way I'm going to go. Now I have my church fussy cut out. I did a really good job with this, so I'm very pleased. I was just looking to see like how big it was compared to the one I did originally, like freehand. So now it's just trying to figure out where I want to line it up. I do have some space left, so I could bring in the Amazing Grace. I don't have room for the whole thing, but I think I can piece together the Amazing Grace. Something else I could have done, I believe I have a scripty like background stamp that just looks like cursive handwriting, that I could have used some ink and maybe stamped a light background of that and then just had the church. I think that would have been cool too, but I didn't think about that until after I had finished this, because I think you get something in your head, and I wanted to use the Amazing Grace, so that's the route I went. So I've trimmed down the stencil that has the Amazing Grace, How Sweet Thou Art words on it. Again, I'm just kind of sticking it against my sweatshirt, and then to fuzz it up a little bit so it's not so sticky. And then I'm going to try and line it up along the bottom here. I'm making sure that there is room going across the bottom for both words, Amazing and Grace. The easiest thing would have been to cut the words Amazing and Grace out of the stencil, but I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to mess up the stencil in case I wanted to use the whole phrase next time on something else. So I'm going to be piecing this together. So I am using some tape, just some washi tape to kind of act as painter's tape. Because the words amazing and grace are fairly close together, I didn't want to accidentally get some of my chalk paste into the word grace, and then I would have had like some black spots at the bottom. So I'm just using the washi tape to cover up the word grace. Doing the same thing with the paste and the squeegee, and adding the word amazing on the bottom. And so this will be 2 parts because I'm going to do amazing, and then I'll go wash my stencil, let the stencil dry, let the word dry on my sign, and then can come back and do the word grace, and then repeat that process all over again. So one nice thing about the stencils too, and this you can do with any type of stencil, whether it's the chalk stencils or the regular paint stencils, is you can use just certain parts of them. You can kind of pick and choose what parts of each stencil that you want to use, and you can combine multiple stencils, multiple parts of multiple stencils. You don't always have to use it exactly as it comes. So I'm happy with the word amazing and how it came out. So I have, again, let the word amazing dry really well so that it's not going to come off when I'm, pulling up my stencil. Now the hard part of trying to line up grace with amazing, and I do end up I'm off to the left really far. You'll see that whenever I'm done, but I'm also going to do the same thing again where I'm just adding the washi tape to cover the word amazing, and then I also need to cover the word how, I think is what's right below grace. Just want to make sure I don't get any chalk in those particular spaces. This was a really fun project, and it's definitely a different way to show you how you can use your scrapbook papers. I mean, Basic Gray always has kind of like a vintage or grunge flair anyway, so it kind of made this particular pattern like perfect for the look I was going for on my sign. And Basic Gray no longer makes paper. They have moved on to fabric. So Sarah and Kathy and I found over the years that we were hoarders of Basic Gray, and so we've been doing this collab for several years, and we decided to do it just so that we can just once a month pull out some Basic Gray and enjoy it, rather than it just sitting in a drawer and us feeling good because we're hoarding it. We feel good now because we're enjoying it. So my my word grace has dried really well. And now I'm going to decoupage my church onto my sign. So I have a little baggie there that I have some Mod Podge in. I have a little tray with Mod Podge, and I'm just using the matte Mod Podge. And because we do this for craft shows, we do a lot of decoupaging. I have the giant bottle, but they do make smaller bottles. Dollar Tree has a small bottle. There's smaller bottles on Amazon. I can link some of that for you as well. And then just a basic foam brush, and I'm applying an even coat all over the top of my sign. And then I'm also going to apply a coat to the back side of my church. So this step acts as glue. This is what's gluing your paper to your surface. And I have found that by applying it to the surface as well as the back of my paper, I get 1, the best coverage, and 2, less air bubbles. There's less chance for there to be like a dry spot somewhere underneath there. And so then you want to burnish it down really well. I have like a little kind of rubber squeegee thing that is specifically from Mod Podge, but you could use anything. You could use I know Silhouette has a vinyl scraper. You could use the Pampered Chef a stoneware cleaner scraper, a credit card. Just if you're using something hard, you want to make sure that you're kind of using a light touch so you don't tear your paper. So I did cut out some of my burnishing. I did burnish quite a bit. I'm an over burnisher, I'm sure. But I made sure that there were no air bubbles. And then now I'm going to seal the project by putting a coat of the Mod Podge over the whole thing. And so I did 2 seal coats. So I did this coat, I let it dry and set, and then I came back in and I did a second coat.
So here's how my sign turned out. I found, since I was off spacing wise down here, I went through my stash and found these little wooden hearts. And so just hot glued it on and then colored it with black alcohol marker just to kind of give it that vintage black look that goes with the rest of the church. So I really like how this came out. I like the vintage look of the basic gray music paper, and I definitely like it better than my free-handed one that I did the very first time. So hope you guys enjoyed this different use for basic gray paper. Please be sure to check out the links for Sarah and Kathy in the description box below. As always, I thank you so much for your time, and I hope you all have a very crafty day.